how do we scale what I did with a few friends with a couple $1,000 to a whole bunch of people with a couple hundred or maybe a couple thousand and just buy bigger things, right? And I was like, we
Yeah.
can do that with crypto. I saw how NFTs and the community got behind everything. I'm like, if you got enough people, you can do anything.
Here we are on the That's Rare podcast. We've got Eddie here with Whimsy, going to be talking a lot about real estate and all things blockchain. Sounds like there's a lot of fun going on with the SEC and getting regulated. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Just tired, bags under my eyes, but everything else, crystal. I'm living my best life right now.
You guys are working hard. I love to hear it. And thanks for taking a moment to come on the podcast. We really appreciate it. Before we dive into Whimsy and all the hard work you're putting in there, I'd love for our listeners who might not know who you are to understand a little bit more about your background. So if you could introduce yourself a little bit, some of your upbringing and education, that would be awesome.
Yes. So let's start from the beginning. So in the winter of 1991, I was joking. Imagine. No, so my upbringing was single mom, Latino family. I'm Puerto Rican, if no one's figured that out yet. So we just raised single mom. Mostly the women in the family took care of us. Had a stepdad for a while, family turmoil and all that. But at a certain point, maybe I'll go in a little bit more detail. At a certain point, around 17, everybody just kind of abandoned me at some point, so I was on my own for a while. Some dark times, right? On our own, 17, still haven't finished high school. At one point, living on my car, got some friends. At some point, you just kind of think, okay, I gotta make something happen. So got to working, got a couple of jobs, got myself an apartment. Just slowly built up over time, right? It's just I don't like to dwell on it. It's not like I think a lot of people relate to some degree of that kind of aspect. But yeah, you just make yourself a few promises, you keep them, and you keep going towards those goals.
Yeah, and grow. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and you got to
Yeah.
put in I call it life's tuition. You got to put in the time and kind of grind it up.
It's the most expensive class too.
Yeah, that's a great. I've never taken it that far. I love that. I love that line. That's a great one. How did you find working and kind of growing up with that upbringing? How did you find blockchain? What kind of clicked for you? How did you get introduced to it?
So funny enough, there was this one kid in high school. I won't say his whole name, but his name was Billy, just first name. And he was always talking about Bitcoin. It's going to be the future. It's going to be everything. And I'm like, how the hell do I buy this stuff? And I couldn't figure it out. So I kind of gave up in high school. But a little after I graduated, another friend said, hey, you can buy anything off this website. And I'm like, what do you mean? Silk Road. And I'm like, how do you use this? And this is before I got into computers, before I got into the touring and just trying to protect myself online. It was mostly just MySpace and early day Facebook, right? So YouTube before you made money. I'm definitely aging myself at this point.
I'm with you. I get it.
Before ad spend. But yeah, it's that's the internet I grew up on. To some of the devs out there listening, what's the book I have? It's PHP. I think it's version 4.
You got to pull it up. The last person that was here showed off their Commodore computer from the 80s. So,
dude, they have a Commodore.
Yes.
What version?
It was wild to even see. I don't even know if it was a Commodore or we were talking about a Commodore, but it was this tiny computer. Jawad, the CEO of Vayner, and Virtua was on our last podcast, and
oh, nice.
Same thing, discussing how'd you get into blockchain. He was all the way back in the 80s. My first computer, I have it right here. Pulled it up. So when you're looking at the book, you got to show the book now to keep it going.
So we're talking MySQL version 5. We got Apache 2.2 and PHP 5.2. That's where I'm at. That's where my programming started. And that's why everybody who talks about PHP on Twitter, I'm like, it's garbage. Don't talk to me like that. Don't disrespect me in this conversation. Switch to another topic. Like I always give somebody like Dean, I always talk mad crap about his PHP. I was like, why are you doing PHP? That sounds like you hate yourself. It's He's like, it's so much better now. And I'm like, I left and never came back, and there's always a greener pasture, you know?
That's awesome. So you started like learning how to code a little bit
Yeah.
after finding out like a little bit about the blockchain. You were like, I want to start diving in a little deeper and actually coding some of this stuff.
Well, it was a mix of that and also a mix of kind of like that entrepreneur mindset because I was on my own for a while, right? So
Mhm.
before I had a job, I would go door to door. Um, and it was like door to door to houses and then door to door like on main streets where there's like small businesses. And I would just offer, I didn't know how to do shit at that point, but I just offered like, hey, I'll help you with your Windows XP. I'll help you pirate software. You know, I would teach myself things along the way and I would just offer it door to door. And surprisingly enough, I picked it up quickly. I was able to fix problems for people, set up POS systems, install new computers for their, I don't know. I think the one thing that what this one guy had was a computer that was solely connected to Brazil, and it was just for his towing business. And it was just to put his website up and connect to the main business just to do finances and stuff. So like, I've always been attached to this kind of world, and then I slowly just started teaching myself some more stuff. I got into audio at some point. I was a wannabe Kanye. That's why I give people so much crap when they're like wannabe Kanyes, because I was one. I know what it looks like. And I worked at Bose, and that's how I started, getting into the corporate world. I got into Bose as in technical support. They had some routing and system stuff when they started. Wow, this is really dating myself. When technology started to integrate Bluetooth and everything, and internet and everything, that's where a lot of people kind of broke the doors and went into the other side. Um, so kids, Gen Z, everyone out there was a moment where the internet wasn't documented, and you can just kind of apply and you could become a dev within a day, and they have to teach you all the new stuff because it doesn't exist. So you're like part of the pioneers who figure it out. Same thing for every new technology. You can always break in through the doors that way. That's what I did. I got into wireless tech, and then from there I just taught myself more and more and got into other gigs as I went along in my tech career.
That's awesome. How did you find Cardano? What brought you to the Cardano ecosystem?
Yeah, so obviously Bitcoin was the first one that I got into. I bought a little bit, I sold a little bit. The only person who regrets it is my brother, who bought a lot of it and forgot about it and then threw the laptop away. And then Bitcoin went to like its all-time high. I think it hit 64K. And he was like, wait a minute, I have a laptop. And he was hunting for that thing for the longest. It's in a landfill somewhere in Florida. So I went from that. I'm not allowed to bring it up to him anymore, by the way. It's a significant amount of Bitcoin. Um, but from Bitcoin, I went into ETH. I got into ETH really early. So I started buying a bunch. I had like I was just doing it here and there. It was back like in 2014 when it was about $100. So I was in my first like all on systems engineer job at Wayfair, managing automation systems, Puppet, and like a few. They were dabbling with the cloud for a little bit. They've since pulled away and built their own cloud because they can't compete with Google or Amazon because they sell the same stuff. But as I'm working there, I'm figuring stuff out. I'm learning a little bit about blockchain with Ethereum, seeing Litecoin get added to Coinbase at some point. I'm seeing the earlier things that wasn't even part of the community. I was just looking at it just purely speculative and using Coinbase as if it was like an E-Trade or a Fidelity, just buying them slowly. And I amassed a good significant amount of Ethereum, and I thought when it hit that 150 price, I was like, oh man, I've made mad money. It's incredible. Me and being an idiot. That was my first true lesson of you should hold a significant amount and just forget about it, and then have a play one that you have with, because that was it's like 1100 ETH that I just spent. I cashed it out. Took my now wife to Puerto Rico. We hung out. We had a great vacation. But that vacation today is something around like what, 22 mil, or something, or like 8 mil, whatever ETH is based on right now. I don't even want to do the math. I don't even want to look at it. But it's just
Yeah.
very expensive vacation comparatively. But and then from there, I got tired of the NFT scene in ETH because it was just the gas fees pushed me out. I personally couldn't feasibly tell myself, yeah, I'll put 10K here, and then I'm buying this thing that's only $1,000 to hopefully make 12,000 on the other end. It I started looking. That literally was the thing that got me looking. Like, okay, there's got to be somebody else. There's got to be another better solution, and that's how I stumbled about Cardano. The the Hoskin videos on YouTube, got the whiteboard experience, and I was like, okay, I like this because I got into finance and into the, just macroeconomics and understanding how cash flows and how systems work. Starting to teach myself, how banking and fractionalized reserve banking and KYC and all that stuff is. So I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. We can't just be willy nilly. Everything's not traceable. Everything's free, because to a certain degree, we still live in countries who want to be their own entities, right? And we do have enemies, and we do have nefarious people, and we have thieves. So there's a certain degree where you do have to collect info, and it does need to be, organized. I think his opinion has shifted since then. I remember in that whiteboard video, he was very like, yeah, we got to connect to KYC. We got to provide that. We got to do this. And now he's more like, no, let's run the other way. But yeah, no, he hooked me in on that video, and I've been here ever since.
That's what's up. Yeah, the whiteboard videos kind of sucked me in during the COVID days and things like that. What made you like want to tie real estate in with blockchain? Because that's so unique. And I think it's such a great way to, bring real world assets onto the blockchain and things like that. What
Yeah.
what kind of prompted that?
Real estate is just something I've been into. So I got lucky enough to work at a company that went public, and I helped them get there, and I got some shares along the way. So I made a good amount of money on my own through that. So I was just investing with friends from like late 2019 to like the 2021. We got that blessing of, all your profits at once in one year. So I sold out of my stuff or got bought out by one or two of my friends who wanted to keep their stuff. Mostly condos out of the Everett, Malden, and like, I won't say the names because nobody really knows unless you've been to Massachusetts, the Boston area, where
Mhm.
all the boroughs and everything are, just a little west outside of Boston. So, investing into some properties there, we had some long-term rentals, but selling them ultimately for the higher price, and people trying to get into that somewhat decent, like 4 or 5%. I think one of them sold at 6.2 of interest rate. So like we made some good money. Like I was like, shit, we got to figure out how to make this more. And I was thinking, while I was dabbling in crypto and I was also doing that and closing some stuff out, the idea came to me, like, why doesn't somebody just figure this out? And I was telling somebody in another space, like, I was just in projects because, early on people were just doing art, and they were just like, hey, community, what do you want us to do? And like they had no actual plans. And I would always say real estate, just get into real estate, buy a bunch of stuff, share the profits or a percentage of it, or figure out how to do it. We're in the gray. This is a gray territory we're in. Like we could do anything and be fine for like 10 years, and then you could figure out how to be legit. But by that point, you have enough money to pay for whatever problem comes your way. Um, I've always thought real estate was like perfect for crypto. It's long-term history. It's immutable. It's the only time you'd ever have to update or change anything is if the house was destroyed, act of God, or you moved it. I guess if it's a mobile home or something, right? Because there's really not much that happens with the house. Once you built it there, it's kind of there for forever. So I think that makes sense. Also, with the things like title and deed, that's a pain depending on what kind of properties you're into, what kind of assets you're into, the searching, the paying for it. Sometimes you have to get title insurance just in case, like maybe we don't know where that title came from and you need the money just in case somebody comes out of nowhere with the title and they take the house. Um, there's always something there, but having something that's immutable, having something that is like a forever storage location, that is something that could just destroy the title and deed industry, right? I scan a QR code, I send my ADA, I buy a house. That's just minting an NFT of a new title and deed, and then we can just void the other one, and you don't have to worry about it coming to you. And then you just time and date it, right? Like there's just things that we all have to agree on to make sure that that new technology, that new way of doing things is used. But the connection came from, like going through a few projects, asking them to do it, and I was like, I'll just fucking do it myself. I know how. And it was from how do we scale? I'm coming from computer systems. That was in automation for cloud. Scaling was always part of my to-do list. So I was like, how do we scale what I did with a few friends with a couple $1,000 to a whole bunch of people with a couple hundred or maybe a couple thousand, and just buy bigger things, right? And I was like, we
Yeah.
can do that with crypto. I saw how NFTs and the community got behind everything. I'm like, if you got enough people, you can do anything. That's the sky's the limit. I was in another space, and some guys were talking about storage units like Extra Space or U-Haul storage. It's like, start one of those franchise, throw that on Whimsy, and you're just printing money at that point. So I've always wanted to dabble in connecting the two.
It's kind of like they converged, and you finally had time in your life. You were doing a little bit of both, and they finally had a place to converge. For those who don't know, the listeners out there who are new, what is the elevator pitch for Whimsy?
Whimsy, it is a place where we fractionalize real estate by fractionalizing it into individual shares. And these shares are able to be purchased for as low as $100. What you're able to do is purchase that share for 100, and then from there, you now own a percentage of that home. And every month, Whimsy will take care of the property, maintain it, put somebody in it, upgrade it if it has to. And then based on the rental income that comes off of it, you get your fair share of net profit of the opportunity that's at hand. There's no guarantees or promises, because the house could catch on fire. Then we have to make it even with the insurance money. But that's the pitch. It's that simple, right? It's not overly complicated. I don't have to teach you anything. And the pitch varies depending on how we approach it. So if it's for you, you just want to buy shares, you want to get into real estate investing, come buy shares for as low as $100. We'll get you access to single family, multifamily, short-term and long-term rentals, or new constructions that will lead to long-term or short-term rentals. And based on those properties and those locations, you'll be able to have a return, potentially if the rental or the lease is profitable, right? But if it's for an individual who wants to offload a house, conversation's very different, right? The pitch is, you're not able to get your house sold. Well, come to Whimsy. We have access to a larger pool of individuals. They will buy small fractions of your home until it's sold. And once it's sold, we give you the cash for the home. We close on that, and then we take over from there. And that's it. It's such a simple way to deliver the message that it doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great and simple pitch showing both sides for the investor and somebody who needs liquidity for a home. I don't think a lot of people realize how illiquid real estate really is.
Especially
It's
right
not,
now.
yeah, especially right now. Yeah, it's not something you can take on an exchange or go to Charles Schwab and just sell it. You have to find a realtor most of the time. You can try to sell it on your own, but the MLS helps. You need to market the home. You have to negotiate a
Mhm.
deal. You have to go through, title inspection, like you're saying. And most of the time, probably you should always get title insurance with today's industry and things like that. So yeah, it takes a lot of time to get that liquidity, and for you guys to be able to advertise quick liquidity and things like that for sellers is also a good one. I know you guys is Whimsy tokenized or an NFT project? How is it a token? How does that work?
So Whimsy is a completely separate entity to Platypus Cyberpunks, which is where the Platy Alpha name comes from. So Platypus Cyberpunks is an NFT project, but it's not focused strictly on real estate. Real estate is just the first pillar of tough challenges to overcome. I could just say that Platypus Cyberpunks is the way for me to do really tough things, difficult goals. So it's really more the Platypus Cyberpunks is a series of businesses that will interlock with each other. They'll all be based off each other. So there are other things I have brought up. There's one thing I won't bring up, which is a very recent thing, but it's a SaaS product that'll help a lot of other project owners get up and running very quickly. I might make a few enemies with some developers in the space, but um, I'll live through that. But the other half of that with Whimsy, Whimsy's the first pinnacle of what we can do with blockchain. We've already completed a full from beginning user onboarding to purchasing shares of property and tokenizing and using smart contracts to automate the entire process. So we already have a like I guess we would call it an alpha right now. We just got to make it prettier and make it look attractive and easy to use. But the whole goal is to make it as simple as possible, not only for crypto, but also for traditional FI. All of our marketing will be for traditional FI. Crypto will just be a benefit because everybody will be able to use ADA or use another coin, because Whimsy is going to be so broad, real estate's so broad. I can't just say, oh, only ADA is allowed, right? So I'm going to accept other currencies from other blockchains. So you could use your Bitcoin, your XRP, your XLM, your ETH, or Solana, and you can buy some shares. It'll also be built on the logic and functionality of Cardano because it is a very stable solution. I look at all the blockchains of different vendors. It's like, okay, what's your evils? What's your positives? What's your evils? What's your positives? And Cardano's kind of the one that just kind of works, right? It doesn't fail on you, and if it does, it's like just kind of just pumping brakes. It's on an absolute stop. Solana, obviously, it's had its bumpy roads. It's had some really good metrics as of late. So I've been keeping up. Like Solana's looking good. It hasn't had any failures, and after an update, it was doing pretty good, especially with the big, I think the Jupiter airdrop. They did pretty good. Ethereum still having a lot of growing pains because they gotta now go from being the second solution, the old tech, to, oh, this is how all the new kids are doing stuff, and they're making a lot of transitions. Now they're looking at gas fees to see how they can remedy it. They're still having hard times. So, I'm looking at everything holistically. I'm not looking at it like, oh, I hate this because of this community, or I'm maxi for one or the other. It's strictly from a software perspective, like which one is the best solution. Cardano is the most standard. I would say for Cardano is like the equivalent of maybe getting AWS, like EC2 instances, where they just like they don't fail, and if they do, that's because you did something really dumb. I would say it's very similar to that, where if it were to fail, somebody would have to push bad code because it's just so, or like an S3 bucket, right? It's there, it exists, it doesn't, it's you get the 99.99999% uptime on it, right? And it's been there for a while. Whereas some other products are kind of like deploying solutions before they're ready. Some of them are still called beta, right? So I just want to make sure I have the solution that'll be there when when times get tough. It'll be stationary.
So, so this Platypus cyberpunks, like, I just want to clarify a little
Mhm.
there. That it's a separate project, or is it more of a parent project with other, like, multiple projects underneath it?
So I consider it completely separate.
Yeah,
I and this is mostly for legal reasons, right?
yeah,
Because Whimsy is very it's very litigious. Like it's very
yeah.
litigious like system where I got to be at the SEC, we got to do FINRA. Every property has to get vetted, not only from the SEC but also FINRA. That has to be approved, and then we list it. And then from there, I can start asking for money to fund and then purchase that property.
Mm,
Um, and then once a year, I have to get audited. But every audit is every series by itself, so it gets expensive. It gets very convoluted the bigger that you get as a company. Um, so, Whimsy had to be its own standalone. It's its own entity. It's structured by itself. Where Platypus Cyberpunks is international. It's based out of the BVI. No banks or anything like that right now. It's a strictly crypto-based project. And a lot of what Platypus Cyberpunks is to just really pair what crypto could be as a solution. So one thing that that we've been building is the NFTs and the staking. You can go to platypuscyberpunks.com/terminal or log in with Discord. It'll bring you to the terminal, and you're able to stake your NFTs now and have a distribution. But we took so much time preparing that it's its own standalone product that honestly we could put a configuration page on it and resell it if we had to. But everyone's done staking, so why would we do that? And then being able to distribute that regularly, consistently, rewarding people. Now people have Venom. Like, what do you do with the token, right? It's like, great, I got this token. What does it do? I still have a bag of tokens in one of my Nami wallets that has no purpose. Most of them are just there for show. So I always think of full economies, like a full closed loop system. Like, how do we receive something, use it, because cash flow is how things get valuable. As you add more things to spend it on, it becomes even more valuable, right? Because um, maybe the community is like, oh, we want gift cards for this, or hey, maybe we want to pay our Netflix bill with it. And then you give people that medium to do stuff with that money. They're going to generate value because you have to spend it, and then you have to go and get more. And depending on the rate of how people are spending to the things that they have access to, it's going to be more and more expensive because everybody's going to start grabbing from that pool that may not have much left. So based on that, I think that's just general like race theory. You have to build an economy. So adding things, that's where Platypus Cyberpunk comes in, is it builds the tools that allow you to get your Venom out there to be used for things. And it builds the technology that we can integrate to other things. So Whimsy will be integrating Venom as a point system. It's a member loyalty component. So as you use Whimsy, as you buy shares, as you maybe we'll do something with promoting or referrals, right? That there will be a way to get rewarded with something similar to a credit card, how you get points for using it, or maybe 1% back or something, right? Because those are membership loyalty points, not securities, not some sort of asset that you have control over, right? So
Yeah, completely. I
that's
understand
that's
that
why
completely.
that's why they're completely separate, and they're both two separate entities. So when you get into Platypus Cyberpunks, as we adopt more of the technology, as we build more features, more use cases with Platypus Cyberpunks, it will be attached to other things down the line.
That makes a lot of sense, man. And we're going through a lot of similar stuff.
Yeah.
We just, rolled out rewards points on our website and looking to
Nice. See,
tokenize
the use
rewards.
case is
So
valuable.
it's out there. It's definitely out there. A lot of people are doing it, and we understand, man. It's a lot of hurdles to jump. There's a lot of legal behind this, and then you guys are adding an even another layer of complexity there when it comes to real estate and FINRA and everything like that. It gets even more complex. So right now for Whimsy, is there a token related with Whimsy at this point, or no?
There's no token associated to Whimsy. The only
Got it.
token that would ever come into existence is when we list a
Hmm.
property. That
And that's
property will,
specific to the
yeah, and
property.
that's specific to the property. And I didn't want to get confused with others. I didn't want to
Yep.
come out with like a real token or a
Hmm.
RELT token. Like people keep telling me, "Oh, you named it wrong," and I'm like, "You don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't get it. You don't understand what you're saying. Like, there's a reason why we built it the way we built it. Like, everything I do is with purpose and it's thought out. So, and I don't think there's going to be a token for Whimsy in the future. I don't see a world where that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, I think everybody wants to have that work, but the economy of scale that you would have to implement for your token to be used on all the things that you do and have some particular value would be immense. So like a game makes sense because in the game you can, it's your world. You can just create things to spend it on. Like, oh, power ups, you need the coin. New weapons, you need the coin, right? Like new animals or new this or new that, you need the coin. You make the economy where you've essentially replaced USD because you made a virtual world that your currency is the king, right? So it's the same logic that you couldn't technically do that in your app because your app is technically just one point of sale instead of the millions or hundreds or thousands you can create within an ecosystem. So if you're going to do the same logic, you'd have to build multiple points of sale, and that's generally what I'm doing. But my virtual world is actually just real life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually really like you're going that route and not just kind of like pushing a random token out there and then trying to figure out, okay, how do we use this with real
Yeah.
estate in the end? You know what I mean? So I really like that a lot and would love to. You touched on regulation. I'm sure that's a big part of it too, is like, you don't want to cross too much tokenizing in the business. You want to actually get approved for the use case that you're looking to do. I want to bring up here, I'm going to present a little bit here, and it's to the
Mhm.
Whimsy Twitter. Your Twitter page is absolutely phenomenal. Tons of real estate information there that I see you showing. You guys are crushing it on getting news out there, real estate stuff. It's amazing. And I saw this post, about the Whimsy legal roadmap on here, and I wanted to touch a little bit on that, on security and the legal aspect of your project, seems like there's a lot that goes into this with this roadmap here. Can you touch on this a little bit and what you guys got going on when it comes to the legal aspect of getting something like this started?
So I will be tactful in the way that I explain it. I won't be super detailed. One, I'm not a lawyer. Anybody here who's trying to copy me, get a lawyer. You're not gonna. I'm not gonna be your answer to everything. I'm gonna tell you something, and you're gonna be like, "That was wrong." And I was like, "Did you get a lawyer?"
Yeah, not
I'm
financial
not a
advice
lawyer.
here on the podcast. Yeah,
Not a
we are
lawyer, not a
not
financial
legal.
advisor. I just do what I'm told by these individuals. Things change. Taxes change every year. Laws change every month to month. Don't
Yeah,
listen to me. Get advice
100%.
from a legitimate person. But the legal roadmap, I wanted to share that because it is a lengthy process, and I know people want to have a point of success, a point of, okay, this is where my status is. So I wanted to share this, and this, I think this is just the most that I can share while you're in a legal process, right? Because when
Mhm.
you talk to lawyers, a lot of them just tell you kind of shut the fuck up and don't say anything, don't do anything, don't put yourself under like the magnifier. So
Mhm.
going through these steps, I've oversimplified it, honestly. The business part, the amount of hurdles that you have to go through to get this to be in a place where you're not only orchestrated and you're registered and you're doing business as in the US, but you also have to get yourself to a point where you're protected. And that goes into organizing your businesses within maybe a trust or maybe some sort of holding entity, and then protecting that business from attack from legal or from somebody who's maybe competing with you, and then they attack you through other means. There's a few things that you can do to a business to like really hurt them, right? So we have different layers of obscurity, but we also have different layers of protection. So that's where a lot of that came into for the business and the registration of it, because we're here for a long time. That's the plan. So with the business piece, we've essentially overcome that. We're now registering all the things that need to be registered for preparation for getting it then registered again with the government business, with the SEC. And then what we do before the SEC gets involved is we do have to do a full audit. So any series, which is the properties that I am going to put up on the platform as the first series that we own that we're going to like implement, those do have to be registered. Now there is a window of time that I can be given for like test the waters, where you list something, you see if someone is interested, and then after you sell it out, you can use some of that money for the registering, because it's like 10 grand every time you want to update the SEC. Like it's expensive. Um,
Wow.
and then the audits once a year. But this audit's the initial one. So they go through everything about your life, your personal finances, the business, where it stands, and the assets you hold. They go through the whole thing. I was just talking to one of the CPAs today who's just giving me the rundown of the stuff he needs, how much it's going to cost, and everything. It's not a lot, but as the business gets more and more successful, um, every entity has to be treated individually. And I don't see a lot of projects having the capital nor the patience to do that right now. Um, and I think what we're seeing a lot right now is people who are kind of testing the waters to see if people care. They hear RWAs, they hear that BlackRock and JP Morgan are all interested in tokenizing real world assets. Well, the purpose behind that is to move liquidity without having to sell or get rid of the property, right? So that's where these steps come in, is as we get closer to launching the platform and putting these properties up. The platform could launch tomorrow. Technically, if you go to whimsy.xyz right now, you can subscribe to the email list. You can subscribe and get notified on the property that we have listed there already. Um, and ultimately, those are just notifications for when we do go live. And you'll be able to buy those shares from that moment. But we can't sell you anything until we have the business structured, until we've had the audit, and we are at least within the first phase of the SEC communication, because that's a back and forth. They're always going to submit comments. They're always going to submit changes. They're going to say, hey, you can't say this. You got to say it this way. Because if they get the information and they don't give you comments, they're not doing their job, right? So they always have to do something, even if it's perfect and it's just like the one you did before. They're always going to give you comments. And then with FINRA at the end, It's an approval letter. We are working with broker agents. So we do have 1, 2, and eventually 3 broker agents we'll have in the future. So we'll be following and being checked by 3 different entities as we list properties, as we sell them, and as we eventually do buying and selling secondary market for any of the shares that you do buy from properties on our platform.
I love that. And it seems like there's so much that goes into this. Like a lot of time when you look at this roadmap here, do you have a time estimate on this? And I know it's so hard to give that, but in your mind, where do you see completion of this? Is it in 2024 or?
Oh, absolutely within 2024. I can at
Awesome.
least tell you that.
Oh, wow.
Can I tell you, is it going to be in a month or 2? No.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the guidelines and what the SEC is going to do. I don't
Yeah.
know where FINRA is going to come back to us, right?
Yeah.
After we get through the first initial registration, everything else is just upkeep, right? Because we're already registered. We're already searchable on the Edgar, just alongside with all your other shares and stuff, with your stocks and these different companies. Because all the properties are public. That's what allows it to be a legal security in the U.S. It's public information. It's transitory. You're able to transition between different properties or buy into different properties. We're essentially, by definition, an alternate asset market is what we're creating. The idea of tokenizing real estate is kind of funny to me because I think a lot of people who are getting into it right now think that it's just, okay, I got some blockchain, I got some smart contracts, I've took the price of this home and divvied it up to the minimum dollar value that I want it to be. And I don't think they understand that those tokens mean nothing unless there's a real world equivalent that actually does match it one for one. And you can represent that as individuals who can own that. And the way that things are structured today with some other products, other competitors in the space, whether you're doing it in a DAO or you're doing it as these are NFTs, they're representative, and it's just a trust me, bro, conversation and agreement. Those ones are going to be very tough coming into the future when competition does speed up. Again, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Fidelity, you got some of the bigger institutions. Bank of America just announced that they're partnering with Ripple and they're going to fractionalize through them of all their assets. There's going to be a magnitude of different banking and institutional firms that are going to come out and have solutions or use solutions. And the competition is going to get so fierce that you're going to get these guys with lots of money trying to shut down all these other ones that weren't prepared. And that's why, with my legal guidance and the advisement that we have on our team, they just said, just do it the right way. You do it the right way. Even if they come after you, they can't do anything because you're legally protected. All they can do is offer you a bunch of money to make you go away. And I'm okay with that too. I'm not opposed to somebody saying, hey, here's a number. It has a little B on the end of it. Do you want it? I'll be like, yeah, that sounds good. Sorry, I strayed a little bit away from it, but I just want to make it very clear, like, this is a very important step if you're getting into not only in the US, but also internationally. The UK, Dubai, big market. They will not do business unless you are already compliant in another entity or another country's laws. And the US is like, you follow these rules, you kind of fall into place in all the other ones.
Right. Yeah, it's like a leader for reciprocity for a lot of that stuff. If you're, licensed here, a lot of that has reciprocity in other countries, and you're pretty much automatically approved elsewhere and stuff. That's really interesting. How you had touched on a little bit that you guys already have properties purchased. How many properties are currently in the portfolio going through this process? Is it just one? Is it a few? And you don't have to answer that if you don't want it. I was just curious.
I'm just holding my tongue a little bit
Yeah.
because so since day one, I've always said that I've had financial partners from the get-go.
Mhm.
And these aren't
Mhm.
individuals giving me any money. I'm doing most of this by myself, kind of like proving the point, like, nope, there's a market here, there's enough people, there's enough interest
Mhm.
where we can be successful and we can bring something of value to a market. And it was kind of like, touch and go, just, okay, figuring it out. The mint took forever, so it took a while to convince them. But once we minted out, we got a lot more people involved. We got a lot of attention on socials. I convinced them like, hey, let's jump in. So I got another guy who's already looking at properties in Ohio, looking at properties beyond the state of Georgia, because he does international and he does localized real estate, but not like within a state. He'll find good properties, but he just scours it throughout the U.S. and he'll find a good property, get it ready, and then we put a management company in place, like a third party. So right now, I'm not going to tell you a number, but I'll tell you there's at least one in Belize that's a resort, and that one is already the land's already owned. I already got an architect and builders ready to go. So, and maybe a little alpha. I got a guy in Athens, Georgia. If he's watching this, I don't know which project to plug, but it's the Crash Dummies. He also in real life is a contractor. So, some land that I'm looking at in Georgia. If I buy it, or if I've already bought it, or if I don't buy it, there may be another new construction out of this location that we might stand up.
I love that. So moving forward, plans are happening. The roadmap's getting executed on. You guys are doing some cool stuff. You did touch on a little alpha there. Any alpha you could share with the guests? What is your future roadmap to accomplish this year, 2024? Anything on the roadmap that you want to specifically highlight?
So now we're in that moment where it's like,
Let's pretend it's you and I in a room and there's no recording.
yeah, no recording, no nothing, no one's here. No, it's just us.
No, it's just us.
No, it's just that I would always during the mint always talk very openly. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But now I'm in a position where we're doing a lot of stuff and stuff's getting done. And if I say something at the wrong time, or if I say something inaccurate, so that's why I'm pausing the way I am. I'll say this. On the Platypus Cyberpunk side, there is some alpha coming out. I've shared some hints to it. Paddle Gang already knows what's going to happen. Not that many Paddle Gangs, only 100 total, and I think maybe 44 are in the Discord because they bought like 1,000 of them. There will be some marketing, there will be an animation, and there will be a lot of push and excitement towards doubling your Venom. And that's all I'm going to give you.
I love that. You guys keeping a little mystery to it there for everybody to kind of nibble on. I love that. For folks that are watching and they want more information after this podcast, what's the best way for people to kind of keep up with Whimsy? Is it the Twitter account? Is it a Discord? Is it the website? Where do you want people to go find more information about Whimsy?
All right. So here's for the different groups. The ones who like alpha from loose-lipped founders, you want to go to the Discord. Sometimes I get excited and I forget what channel I'm in and I share too much. So Discord's good. If you want to stake your NFTs, you want to get into platypuses, you want to start being part of the ecosystem, platypuscyberpunks.com. You'll be able to log in with your Discord. You have to be in the Discord anyway, so there's your information. And we also have lots of white papers and documentations in the Discord. And then for Whimsy, if you want to get into real estate and you just want to wait to buy real estate and you don't want anything with platypuses, totally fine. Just go to Whimsy's Twitter account at WMSY_estates, and you should be good to go. All the information's there.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on, Eddie. This has been a great one. As somebody who, has dabbled, I used to hold my real estate license and have some rental property myself. This is a really fascinating project. I've been through the painful process of buying and selling real estate for myself and for others, and I think this is a really cool way for the general public to get easy exposure to real estate in the future. And I love what you're doing. So I thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything here that you think I've missed that the public needs to hear before we wrap it up?
I don't think there's any alpha left, but I will leave on this note.
Love that.
The last thing that I was told by it was a legal team for a CPA company, so a multitude of people who are ready for putting you in trust, putting you in wealth management, those who find out protect you legally, a few attorneys. It was just like a team of like 6 or 7 people. I was shopping around different orgs, different people. He works not through them, but as a third party for the banking and legal protection, some weird niche firm. But he is a branch subsidiary of JP Morgan. And as he was poking me with questions and like, okay, who's doing this? Who's doing that? Trying to gauge like, am I a security risk? Am I a concern as a customer? And by the time we got to the end of the call, he just said, the thing that you are currently working on, I know for a fact. And he just looked at the camera like, I know for a fact you're going to piss a lot of people off and you're going to be a major disruptor. Are you ready for that? And I just told him the joke that I had for you. I was like, if they have a number and that number just happens to end with the letter B, I'm very buyable, you know? Like I'll reward my community in another way. Like I'll have the money to just throw it away, right? But it's that stuck with me where he just had that serious face of like, this is a legitimate concern you should be thinking about. And I think whoever can get to the tokenomics and be the most legitimate solution of a tokenization of real world assets, the sky is the limit at that point. I think we're going to see some major shifts in the market very soon.
That's a great point and a great message to leave everybody with. I think you've killed it today with information. This has been a really, really good one, and I appreciate you coming on, and hope to do this again in the future as we get closer to some launches and closer to Rare Evo. You'll be at Rare Evo this year. Really excited to have you out in Vegas and for folks to come see you live, visit the booth, and build that trust with all the investors and new folks that are watching here that are interested to shake hands. So really appreciate the time, Eddie, and I'm sure we'll have you back on before we get to Vegas. That's for sure.
Of course, anytime.
Thanks, man.